everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Forensics. My name is Rebecca, and I am joined here again today by the wonderful Journey and Nicole. This week, Journey is going to be leading our discussion about the topic of contract killers, otherwise known as killers for hire or hitmen. And we do not have any listeners' discretions this time around. As you know by now, we're a true crime podcast, and we will be discussing death throughout it. So with that being said, Journey, would you like to get us started on this exciting topic?
Yeah, for sure. So like Rebecca said, I will be telling you all about killers for hire, which surprisingly was very difficult to research. There was almost too much information out there, and it was all contradicting, which was super fun for me. So I'm just going to give like a little bit of an info dump of what I could find, and then talk about 2 case studies with lots of discussion in between, hopefully. So to start, I researched most of this in a coffee shop, and I was just telling Nicole and Rebecca earlier that nothing felt weirder than typing killers for hire into my search bar in public. So that was super fun. It also doesn't yield many search results when you look into like contract killers, which is good, I guess. I don't really know how to interpret that. So I just went to like Google Scholar and was like, contract killers for hire, academic.
I guess it's nice that it's not giving you like a wiki how with pictures for contract killers. Yeah. So step 1, call your local contract killer.
That would be insane. One of my sources said that like a lot of the contract killers that you like hire in quotations are like police officers or FBI agents. So I was like, that's kind of interesting and maybe good. But yeah, there was one website where the author had dedicated like quite a few years of his career into researching contract killers. And he was either like a sociologist or a psychologist or something. And he has like a trilogy coming out that focuses on the ins and outs of contract killing. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah, I was like, what an incredible resource. Mm-hmm. But to get into the meat of the episode, you may know contract killers as hitmen, sicarios, and assassins, and there really aren't any differences between those 3. The main difference between hitmen and assassins is that hitmen kill for money while assassins kill for politics, and sicarios are defined as hired gunmen for drug cartels. So they're all just different names for the same thing.
Nice.
And contract killing is not exclusive to street crime and criminal enterprises. It is a global industry that dates back to the formations of governments and empires, where those in power or coming into power would seek out the use of a contract killer. And so assassins have also been used by the military and secret services around the world. And we see a lot of movies about them. Within organized crime, contract killers are used to maintain order in groups, to seek revenge, and to settle debts. Regular people can also hire hitmen, and they usually hire them for more like personal reasons, where like a scorned lover seeks permanent revenge, or for monetary gain or fraud. So hiring a killer to collect the victim's life insurance. Similar to Nanny Doss, but she was just doing that for fun. So experts in law enforcement and international espionage say that contract killings are difficult to arrange, let alone to get away with. And I feel like that statement might be true now, but I definitely don't think that's always been the case. And there was a recent plot, apparently, to kill a Sikh separatist in New York City, where the alleged conspirators hired a hitman who turned out to be an undercover agent working for the U.S. government. And that article was written earlier this year. So it actually was very written. And it's very recent. So I think it's wild that people are still like hiring hitmen.
Yeah. No one wants to do their own dirty work, I will say.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. And if you got the money for it, why not?
Exactly. Keep your hands clean, even though you're usually hiring like a police officer. Yeah. And then apparently in 2022, there were only 7 arrests for contract killing, which is apparently quite high because the last 5 years don't add up to that number like altogether. And this specific article that I found that number in felt very focused on making it seem like murder for hire plots never work. So like, don't even consider it. And it felt almost like thou doth protest too much. Like, Just it was written by like a police officer being like, don't ever hire a hitman, it never works. And then everyone else is like, well, but it kind of does sometimes though.
Sometimes you're lucky.
So, exactly, like if you just work for the mob, you're good to go.
Yeah.
And a different article said that since the beginning of the 21st century, it has been argued that contract murder is more frequent than any other type of crime and appears to be increasing. So
fascinating.
Yeah, two very different sides of the coin.
Yeah.
And the increase has been seen in the USA and the UK since the 1960s, and then in Russia in the 1990s. But I'm not too sure how true like those numbers are. Mm-hmm. And something else that struck me as odd was that in a lot of my sources, they would specify that most contract killers were working in Sweden, the USA, and or the Netherlands. Oh. It was those three regions, which I don't fully understand. So maybe I just found the sources written in those three regions, but it was quite odd. So contract killers, going into a little bit more of what they are very versatile and are able to hone their killing style to their employer. They have the ability to compartmentalize their actions. I found a quote that said, previous research has suggested that most contract killers are not psychotic, but they display varying degrees of personality disturbance, end quote. And that personality disorders are more likely to be detected among amateur contract killers rather than professional and semi-professional contract killers. Which is interesting. Yeah. And I don't quite know what to make of that, but very cool. And they also said that there's little regret. And if there is regret, it's often for how the job was handled, not the fact that they murdered someone.
that they killed someone. Love that.
It's very like professional, right? Like,
yeah.
This is
it's just another job to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
how can I excel at the position I'm in? And what can I do to better myself the next time?
Yeah, exactly. You know? But I feel like there's a little bit more on the line. So I'd be kind of like very aware of like, this has to go perfectly. And so that being said, these killers are efficient, well-planned, quick, and professional. They also aren't afraid to murder in the daylight, with some contract killings being done in the presence of family and children in order to create more of an intimidating effect, which is insanely traumatizing. And sometimes innocent people will get caught in the crossfire, and sometimes the entire person altogether can be killed just because they might have the same like descriptors or drive the same car or work at the same building kind of thing. And for some reason, hitmen are great at being invisible because they can go unknown to the point where some are never known. So there can be hitmen out there that we just will never catch. And unlike serial killers, they do not have a quote unquote cooling off period because they respond to demand like a job. And they also don't necessarily get any thrill out of it and are supposedly not led by a desire to kill for pleasure. But I would argue that there's some form of thrill and pleasure because this is such a unique job to go into that, and I guess unless you're like pressured into it, I feel like you have to kind of enjoy the work you're doing a little bit. And according to one of my sources, contract killers are not classified as serial killers, even though they may kill many people. And there's one example where a contract killer turned into a serial killer. And so his name was Roy DeMeo, or Demeo, I don't really know how to pronounce it. And he was a member of the Gambino crime family in New York City. He started to enjoy killing a little bit too much and started to kill just for the sake of it. He referred to his kills as the Gemini method. And so I was able to find what the Gemini method is because I was very curious. And so that is when the silencer of the gun is pressed right to the forehead before fired. So execution style, I guess. Okay. I don't know if it came from there or not. A towel is then wrapped around the head to stop the bleeding, and the victim is stabbed in the heart to prevent more blood from pumping out the gunshot wound. The body of the victim is then put into the bathtub for the rest of the blood to drain or congeal to eliminate the mess. After that's done, the body is placed on plastic sheets laid out in the main room and dismembered. The body parts are then put into bags inside cardboard boxes and sent to the Fountain Avenue dump in Brooklyn. And he coined it the Gemini method because the majority of the killings took place in the Gemini lounge where they all hung out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So is that like a nightclub? Or
I don't know.
You know?
They just described it as a lounge. And I was like, I don't know what that word means. Like, are we talking living room, like hotel lobby? Like, I don't really understand. But they had like a little like apartment in the back, which is where they would take them to kill them. So it had like the bathtub in the main room and all of that. But yeah, I don't really know. And so he was assassinated by his associates because he was, quote, out of control and had to be silenced because he just kept killing, I guess. Which is not what you want. Yeah. And so there are many stages to a contract killing, which can be laid out in what's called a crime script, which is basically just like a layout of the events, which is really cool. There was a paper I read on it, and it just was written in a way that I had never read before, and especially referring to each crime having a crime script where there's like a specific order of events that they usually go in and like how it breaks down and what you need for each step. And so I kind of found 2 different crime scripts and combined them. So this is my crime script.
Okay.
And so the first step is ordering the kill, which is fairly self-explanatory. But in some cases, the principal, who is the person who wants someone dead, they approach what's called a murder broker, who looks for people who can prepare and execute the murder. So they're kind of like the receptionist of your local hitman office.
Lovely.
So
I would have that job. I'd take that job. Are there benefits? I'll answer those calls.
Well, dental and vision.
Yeah.
The second step is preparing the contract killing through facilitators. And so this step includes like getting the guns and vehicles and any other technology needed to commit this murder and kind of ironing out the plans of what you're going to do. And then in the third step, you kind of create the right circumstances for the killing. So you use the technology you got in the last step to observe the target. Sometimes they'll even have spotters who gather the information on the victim for them so that they're never, or I assume that this is because they don't ever want to be seen in the same vicinity as the victim, so they can kind of keep a hands-off approach. And then kind of selecting the perfect moment for step 4, which is the actual killing. And that is also very self-explanatory. And then we have step 5, which is the getaway or escape. So you need like getaway vehicles, people, like routes, like how you're getting out of there, how you're getting evidence out of there, like what you're doing to clean up, I guess. I was also watching Dexter while researching this, and it was kind of cool to see him as like he should have just been a contract killer because he had all of this ironed out to in such fine detail that it would have been perfect for him.
Yeah.
And then the last step is cool down. So that's just also getting rid of evidence and lying low. And one of the authors of one of my sources has a ton of research on contract killers. And their main takeaway was that, quote, anyone could be a contract killer and many of us would never even know, end quote. Which is, it's real scary.
Yeah.
Because
I wonder, like, the mentality and mind you would need to create that separation. Like, if we just pass by all of these contract killers and not know, that's a little irksome. How many people do I work? Do I work with contract killers in my office?
Right?
You never know.
You never know. Like, did that person who like held the door open for you at Starbucks, was he a contract killer? Like, so many questions, which if you really think about it, can get real scary real fast.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep that just at an arm's length.
I read a statistic. This is probably such an inaccurate statistic, but it was something along the lines of like, you pass at least one serial killer, or you meet at least one serial killer in your life kind of thing.
Wow.
1 to 3, I forget what it was, but I feel like that would not be uncommon or unlike the contract killers here. Like, wild.
And they do such a good job of like remaining unknown that you can't even like get statistics on how many contract killers are like even in your area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was wild. We were at a comedy show the other night, and there was 2,500 people in the building, and he was like making a joke of something. And he was like, yeah, like turn to like the people in your left and right and whatever. And there's 2,500 people in this building. So that means there's at least 5 registered sex offenders. I was like,
oh my.
Is that true? Or was that a joke?
Well, given who you went to go see, I would not be surprised with what's coming out. But I like, did you know you can like search up sex? This is a whole other side tangent, but you can search up sex offenders in your area online.
I didn't know that, but I've never actually thought about doing it until right now.
Yeah, I did it once in university, and it was interesting to see.
Why would you do that then? I was the most scared then.
Granted, I was in a sexual offending course, so we were learning about sexual offenders and like the recidivism, and I think you were in that course with me. I think, Rebecca. Very, very fascinating.
I thought you were talking to me. I was like, no, I was not in that course. That sounds great.
Yeah, no, it was super interesting.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, side tangent.
Wild. Sorry. So now that everyone is also uncomfortable,
yep.
And you kind of have the spark notes of what a contract killer is. They're really like, there was so much and so little information on it that was the most that I could find about what a contract killer is without actually like talking to a contract killer.
Yeah.
So it kind of didn't feel like much. So I'm going to go into some case studies. I have the Iceman and the President Lincoln assassination as my chosen case studies. And before that, the first documented case of a contract killing is seen in the Bible, which I thought was kind of funny.
Cool.
Because God hired Abraham to kill Isaac, his son, and he commanded him to kill him for like a sacrifice of how much he trusts God. And Abraham was going to, and at the very last second, he didn't or whatever. And then God came down and was like, I'm just testing you to see if you trust me. And the fact that you were willing to kill your only kid for me shows that you trust me. So you can just kill this goat for me instead and we'll be tight. And I was like, oh my God. Okay, cool. So that was insane. And then another famous example of contract killing was the murder of Julius Caesar.
Nice. Yep.
Which we're all kind of familiar with. The Ides of March was like 4 days ago at the time of recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because everyone kind of like worked together to kill him. And so, yeah, the first example I'm going to go into, or case study, is Richard Kuklinski, or the Iceman. I thought he was going to be way more intense than he actually was.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was very interesting. So he's classified as an American serial killer who was convicted of 4 murders in 1988 and a 5th in 2003. Oh. He has since confessed to killing at least 100 more and has worked as a hitman for the mafia. Those last things might not be true.
Okay. Speculation? Mix of reports? I was just going to say, is it like speculation and just a mix of reports, or?
No one can verify that he ever worked for the mafia or killed these people.
I guess it could be a difficult thing to verify unless you are in the mafia, I'd say, or close ties to the mafia. And I feel like you're not talking about folks in the mafia if you're not.
Yeah. Like Richard Kuklinski claimed that he killed Roy DeMeo from earlier in the episode.
Okay.
But no one in the Gambino crime family knows who Richard Kuklinski is. So it's like, are they just saying that to cover up, or was he actually not a part of it? Like, we don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But so amazing if he did actually work and everyone is just like, nope, we've never heard of him. So he was born April 11th, 1935. His parents were very abusive to him and his siblings while they were growing up. His father actually ended up killing one of the kids and then abandoning the family shortly after. So Kuklinski was obviously a little traumatized from that. And he killed the neighborhood cats for fun as a kid and committed his first murder as a teenager. So his first murder was beating his bully, Charlie Lane, to death with a wooden dowel. He then cut Charlie's fingers off and pulled his teeth out to prevent the body from ever being identified. He then went after the rest of the bully gang and beat them close to death with an iron rod. And this was all prior to grade 8. And I think it's kind of wild that he... Yeah.
Oh, my. Prior to grade 8. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's wild that he had like the forethought for all of like those forensic countermeasures. Like he knew what to do to have the body not get identified, or at least he says he does. I don't know. But yeah, so he left school in grade 8 and then started his career in being a criminal. He would shoot, stab, and bludgeon anyone he didn't like, but he wouldn't kill women. So he did have standards.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yep. And through his enterprise of bootlegging porn films, he became connected with organized crime and was eventually hired as a hitman. And he supposedly worked for many crime families, such as the Genovese, Gambino, and Di Cavalcante families. And it's alleged that he knew DeMeo and that that was how he started working for the Gambino crime family. And then he ended up killing him because he needed to be silenced. And he also claims that he killed over 200 people for the Gambino crime family while he was working with DeMeo or whatever. So they were kind of a terrible twosome. But again, not sure how true that is. He had no preferred weapon and would use handguns, crossbows, sawed-off shotguns, blunt objects, knives, and cyanide to kill people.
Jack of all trades.
Sometimes he would also place the bodies in the freezer after he murdered them and then dump them years later to throw off the investigators so that they couldn't determine time of death as a result.
Years.
But they can't determine time of death anyways.
Yeah.
So
years. I can't imagine having body parts in my freezer for years.
Yeah. Especially
let alone anything for years. Like my concept of time just is non-existent, but like a dead body in your freezer for that amount of time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Especially because like if he killed as many people as he says he did, like you would need a lot of freezers. And it's like, why would you put some in freezers and some not in freezers? Like I just don't understand.
I guess by having no signature is his signature, so no one could like come back to him as if they found these bodies, because they were all kind of different, right? Mm-hmm.
Because a little later on, I say that one of his victims was last seen, and then the Emmy was doing the autopsy, and they found ice crystals in the body's tissues. And they were like, oh, he had been frozen, but they couldn't tell that just by looking at him. Like he must have thawed just enough or whatever and hadn't decomposed before being placed in the freezer. Mm-hmm. So maybe in theory, it's a good like MO.
Yeah. In theory.
But, I don't know.
Possibly. In practice, I don't know.
I'm not sure. You'll have to turn into our how to not get away with murder episode. Yeah. Yeah. So then in 1986, he was arrested and charged for his connection to 5 murders that they were actually able to prove. So the first was George Maliband, who was killed in 1980 after he met Kuklinski to sell videotapes. I'm not sure if that was part of his bootlegging porn operation. And then his body was found stuffed into a barrel. And then Louis Masque was last seen in 1981, and his body was found 15 months later. And so this was the guy I was talking about, where the Emmy found ice crystals in the body's tissues and determined that it had been kept frozen, which led to Kuklinski being called the Iceman. And so both George and Louis had been shot to death.
Could one of the first serial killers that appears on Dexter been based off of this individual? Do you remember the Iceman?
I wonder.
He had his little ice cream truck, I think, that he would freeze people in. Ice truck.
Oh, the ice truck killer, Dexter's brother.
That's his brother? I didn't. Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen that show. Did we learn about that in the first season? Or does that come out later?
Know.
Spoilers, if don't listen if you
Dexter's
are watching Dexter.
Yeah, so the ice truck killer turns out to be Dexter's half brother or full brother. I'm not too sure. But for some reason, like Harry didn't take him, or he wasn't found with Dexter or something. And so then later on he like finds Dexter and is like killing these people to kind of get the attention of Dexter.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And then he starts dating Deb. And they get engaged. And then she winds up on the ice truck killer's table. And then the ice truck killer tries to get Dexter to kill her. But he's like, dude, that's my sister. No. And he's like, but I'm your brother. And he's like, different. You can't do that.
Okay, that's ringing bells now.
Mm-hmm. I also started the new Dexter, like the Dexter New Blood.
Does that have the same characters?
No, it doesn't.
Oh.
He's the only character because someone major dies at the end of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe I should rewatch that show. Coming back.
It's so good. It's on Prime Video now, so or Paramount Plus or whatever. So yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So back to Richard Kuklinski. We talked about 2 of his 5 murders. The third one is Gary Smith, who was given cyanide and then poisoned, and his body was found under a bed in a motel in 1982. After his body was found, a 6-year investigation was started, and Kuklinski was arrested in 1986 when he agreed to help an undercover agent murder a fake man.
A fake man?
He just like, I need you to help me kill John Doe. And it wasn't a real person.
So, okay. Yeah. I was like, they're getting, like, how do you, okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so the 4th victim was Daniel Deppner, and he was found in 1983, and he had also been poisoned. And so he and Gary Smith were part of a burglary ring that was run by Kuklinski, so that's how they knew him. Paul Hoffman was the 5th victim, and he disappeared in 1982 after trying to buy prescription drugs from Kuklinski, and his body has actually never been found, which is, I just don't understand how that happens.
Do we know who was hiring him for all of this? Was it the mob, the mafia, or just angry people?
Oh, these ones he just did for fun. He just didn't like these guys.
These are just, this is his serial killer days. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. But then he must have been like killing for mob people otherwise. Okay. And so it took an ATF special agent went undercover for 18 months to catch him. And so this agent worked like super close to him. And once he was asked by Kuklinski to kill a wealthy Jewish cocaine dealer. And Kuklinski then used the agent to get the cyanide that he wanted. And then that was when he was arrested. And so apparently the agent gave him the fake cyanide, and Kuklinski tested it on a stray dog to make sure that it was like real cyanide. He just like put a little bit in some raw hamburger and gave it to the dog, and the dog didn't die because it wasn't real cyanide. And so he knew it wasn't poison. So he didn't go through with the murder and then was arrested at a roadblock 2 hours later.
Oh, wow.
Which was quite a turn of events.
Well, I was going to say on what crime, but he has committed quite a few crimes. Because I was going to say, were they going to try and get him for the killing with cyanide? But if he didn't go through with it, could they charge him for that then? I guess attempted.
Yeah, I think it would be attempted because I don't think they could let him kill someone else.
Yeah, you can't really give him cyanide.
I guess it was fake cyanide, so they wouldn't have died anyways.
Yeah,
I don't really know. It was weird gathering information for this case. It was super frustrating because there was no information on anything I Googled, and I was like, I love this.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay, and then in 1988, he was found guilty of charges related to the murder of Smith and Deppner, and he pled guilty to Malaband and Masque and confessed to the murder of Hoffman, but those charges were dropped probably because they had no body, and he was sentenced to life in prison. And then in 2003, he pled guilty to the murder of an NYPD detective, Peter Calabro, in 1980.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, kind of wild.
It's crazy. Sorry to interrupt. It's crazy that an NYPD detective can be murdered and not have his his murder solved. I don't know. That just
23 years.
Yeah. And it's only based on a confession, like a life sentence confession, not the gathering of evidence. So,
especially when like he confesses to so many things and no one knows how true any of it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is the wildest part. Mm-hmm. And so while he was in prison, he gave numerous interviews to psychiatrists, criminologists, journalists, and writers. The topics range from the story of his life to detailed descriptions of how/why he committed dozens of murders. Okay. He's the basis for quite a few like TV shows and movies and stuff. There's lots called like The Iceman, and it's his story, I think. And he also claimed to have killed members of organized crime and many other people, but investigators don't think he was telling the truth. And then he passed away on March 5th, 2006 due to cardiac arrest. And some sources say there were suspicious circumstances because he was supposed to testify against a former mobster who was being tried for murder. But he had developed Kawasaki disease in 2005 and had been suffering with heart disease and phlebitis leading up to his death at 70 years old. So it doesn't really feel that suspicious.
I have never heard of Kawasaki disease. Do you know of that?
I've heard of it, but I'm going to look up what it actually is.
So he had some health issues.
So Kawasaki disease is a heart condition that develops suddenly. And so it causes the immune system to attack blood vessels, which become inflamed and swollen. And then,
that could make sense for heart conditions and heart failure.
Yeah.
Or it could be the mob. You never know.
You never know. He had, like 3 or 4 different heart ailments and passed away from a heart attack. I'm like,
definitely the mob.
Nothing screams mob like that. So I'm like, even his cause of death is like, I don't know how true it is. So here we are. And so that was all I could find on Richard Kuklinski that seemed semi-truthful. Mm-hmm. And the second person that I want to talk about is John Wilkes Booth. And so he is a very well-known assassin who I've always been intrigued by. And he was also brought up at the comedy show we went to. And I was like, what are the chances? Yeah, because he like came out on stage. He's like, oh my gosh, those are the Abe Lincoln seats. And he's like, wild, they still sit people there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, better watch out for the third act, ha ha ha, kind of thing. And we're like, yay.
You're so funny.
Yeah, but I was like, please tell me more. Like, I'm doing an episode on this. I want to like double check your information, but he told me nothing I didn't already know. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Useless.
Right? So, John Wilkes Booth, he was born May 10th, 1838, and was the 9th of 10 children in his family. Wow. His father is Junius Brutus Booth, who was supposedly a very famous actor at the time, and they kind of had his name in the article like I should just know who he is.
Obviously, you don't know Junius Brutus Booth?
No, wow. I've never heard of him.
Get with the times, Journey.
I know. I'm so uncultured. So he was just a huge actor at the time. And Booth had tried his hand in acting for quite a while, but wasn't as successful as his brother, I think, Edward. And he also went on to become like this huge actor. And they also said his name, like I should know who they're talking about. And I just didn't. And so this was kind of the time of the American Civil War. So John Wilkes Booth acted throughout the Civil War instead of fought, which doesn't feel like something he should be allowed to do. Because your whole country's in war right now, and who's going to plays?
Well, was it, were they plays for the soldiers? Because I've heard of things where they'll like put on performances for the soldiers for the morale and stuff like that. Or was he just out there Shakespeareing it up on the Friday
night?
I
have no idea.
As his brothers were fighting. Okay.
Yeah. Except for his huge actor brother and his dad, I think.
Yeah.
So he was also a supporter of the Southern cause, and he was quite outspoken for his support of slavery and his hatred of Lincoln. So all around, super great guy. He was a volunteer in the Richmond militia, and by the autumn of 1864, he had started to plan to abduct President Lincoln. And his ideas were shared by a number of people, so he had gathered quite the group who met frequently to work out this plan for abducting the president. They had attempted many abductions that were obviously unsuccessful, so he decided that assassination was the way to go. Insane to me that he just tried to abduct the president and no one thought twice about it. They were just like, yeah, you can just go on your way. You're just like a huge acting family, so peace be with you. It's okay.
It's a free pass.
Yeah, you're a nobleman. You would never.
They're just acting. They were just pretending to steal away the...
Exactly. It was a huge like role playing so that the Secret Service would be on their toes or whatever. If they even had Secret Service in the 1800s, I don't know.
Who knows?
And on April 9th, 1865, Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse, marking the end of the American Civil War. So the North had won, slavery is abolished. Exciting, exciting. Naturally, Booth was very pissed, and on April 14th, 1865, he learned that the president was attending the evening performance of Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater in the Capitol. That's funny because there's a rumor that Lincoln was like married to his cousin or slept with his cousin, or there was some sort of incest going on there. So they're like fitting that was the name of the play that he died at. So I was like, super cool. And Wilkes Booth started to plan to assassinate him that night at this play. So at 6 p.m. that evening, Booth entered the building before anyone else had gotten there and made it so that the outer door of the presidential box could be jammed from the inside. And he then returned during the third act of the play and shot President Lincoln in the back of the head with a .44 caliber Derringer gun, which is super cool looking because I had to Google it. I was like, I've never seen that word before. Very cool. And after grappling briefly with a Union officer, he jumped off the balcony onto the stage, where some say that he broke his leg and other people say that he broke it later. There's a theory that his horse fell on it and broke it. So don't know how it happened, but it was broken. And he was able to make his escape and reach his getaway horse. He also yelled something like "Sic semper tyrannis," which means "thus always to tyrants," as he like jumped off the balcony or was running away or something. Some people say that they distinctly heard him say that. Other people say that he said something else.
Gotta go out with a bang, I guess. Make your legacy known.
Yeah. And so this was kind of like a
no pun intended.
I didn't even catch that. He was kind of like paying homage to Brutus killing Caesar with saying "Sic semper tyrannis," I guess. I don't get it, but whatever. And Lincoln died at 7:22 a.m. the next morning, April 15th, 1865. Booth fled Maryland, stopping at one point to get his broken leg treated by a doctor who was then later charged with like conspiracy against the president because he helped someone run away. Fair enough. A massive manhunt was issued with a $100,000 reward. Booth and his fellow conspirator David Harold hid in a thicket of trees near the Zekiah Swamp in Maryland for many days before moving on to a farm south of the Rappahannock River. During this time, he was apparently writing in a journal and was shocked that people were mad at him because he expected to be treated as a hero after killing Lincoln. And I can just imagine him sitting around like their little campfire with a broken leg, like, "Dear diary, why do people hate me?
All I've ever done was good things."
Yeah, exactly.
I only wanted to help the people, and I just only killed the most important man in the Like, yeah.
Exactly. It's like, I am a hero. I don't know what these other people are going on about. So that's just a funny image. And then on April 26th, troops arrived at this farm. I don't know how they knew to go there, but they got there. And Booth was hiding in a tobacco barn, and Harold gave himself up before the troops set the barn on fire. And Booth refused to surrender, but he must have, because he didn't burn to death in the fire. He was shot either by a soldier or himself, I believe, on like his body identification was made on the porch of the house. I don't know where he was shot. And he was identified by a doctor who had operated on him the year before. And then his body was secretly buried. And for some reason, his body was reinterred 4 years later.
Oh.
They didn't expand on that. I was like, very weird. And there are rumors at the time, and kind of now, that the person who was killed was not actually Booth, but there is zero evidence to support that. So everyone's pretty sure that Booth was killed.
It sounds like, though, that when he was, when he was identified, what was it? Yeah, identified by a doctor who had operated on him the year before. Wouldn't the majority of people know that would be Booth, though? Like, why did they just have the one man identify him? Does that make... You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I feel like it's not like now where not everyone knew who he was.
He was just some guy that...
Yeah.
Shot. He wasn't the famous Booth. He became the famous
he's not
Booth.
The famous son. He's just the other one.
A son.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I feel like you wouldn't really want to expose that to other people. So they're probably like, we're going to have like a professional doctor who we know knows you.
Yeah.
And like, I guess depending on where he was shot, there might need to be other landmarks on his body, like to identify him by as well. I don't really know. It was 1800s. They didn't have great record keeping.
This is true. This is very true.
But that's actually all I have because it's 2024 and I couldn't find any decent records on anything. So maybe it's not the 1800s fault. It was kind of chaotic, but I hope you guys learned something new.
Yes, I did. Do we know if Booth was working for or with people, or was this just like his plot through and through?
He had a group of guys, but him and this Harold guy were the ones like hiding out together at the end. I don't know what happened to the other people.
Okay.
But Harold was tasked with killing someone else on Lincoln's team, but he didn't.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Journey, for leading that discussion. It was really interesting. I had no idea that a kill script existed, and I just kind of think it's funny to like picture a killer just before they kill, being like, okay, first thing on my checklist, find the victim. And yeah, it's like a grocery list for killing.
Just walking around with the clipboard, just like marking it off. Okay, victim acquired, check. Victim shot, check. Okay. Check. Hide body, check.
Check. That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and also just learning about those two killers, because I've, aside from like the occasional Dateline episode where a wife or a husband attempts to hire someone and it doesn't really go through, like I haven't heard any famous cases about killing for hire. And I had no idea that John Wilkes Booth, I had no idea that like he was involved in that sort of thing. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, it's like the whole like contract killing is kind of such a widespread net because like any assassin could be considered a contract killer.
Yeah,
which is
absolutely
wild. And a lot of them like worked for the mob. So it was like,
I could see that.
Yeah.
If you guys have watched Narcos, it looks like Pablo Escobar had a lot of contract killers. Like pretty much everyone that worked for him would be doing killing for him, which was crazy. Yeah, if you guys don't mind heavy subtitles, highly recommend Narcos on Netflix. It is an amazing show.
Okay, yes. It's been recommended to me by so many people.
For good reason. Mm-hmm. But yeah, with all of that talk and interesting stuff about contract killers, we're going to move on for this last piece of our episode. Nicole, I see that you have like a forensic corner kind of fun fact, news story, something for us.
I do. This one's actually really recent too. So there was a study that was just published on February 3rd of 2024. So this year, looking into bloodstain pattern dynamics in microgravity. So there's some
What does that mean?
Basically, their pilot study, they got into one of those planes where you can get like zero gravity arcs. You know how you can like practice for space and you hit a zero gravity system? So as they were in that zero gravity, they conducted bloodstain spatter tests to see if blood reacts differently or as we would expect in zero gravity as it would on land. And it's for for extraterrestrial use, which seems silly because the way that they've worded it in the abstract and like the purpose, they're like, for future crimes, because the world is ever expanding and people are moving out to like space. It's good to know how crime can happen in space.
I was going to say, that's so funny. Like, that seems like such a niche thing to study right now, because I don't know if anyone's ever been murdered in space.
Nope. I can tell you they haven't.
Yeah, there's just an influx on crime in the space station or something. Like,
well, I think there's discussion about private companies taking rich people out to space on like just trips.
Right.
And then there's what I briefly read was that they're thinking about having like a full-time base on the moon or on somewhere. I don't really fucking know.
I forgot about that. Yeah, they are. I mean, I don't know when the base on the moon's going to happen, but I know they're talking about going back within the next like decade or so. So I guess like as space travel advances more, like there might actually become a use for this. So we might as well get a head start on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they ended up finding, though, that it does obviously react differently, but not in a very noticeable way. And it was a very small study. They only did like 21 samples because you can only do so much in the little amount of time you have in zero gravity. But basically, as the blood was like dispersing, it just stayed more in ball form as it was in the zero gravity. And then as it hit, it still spread similarly to on land.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there were
That's so neat.
Yeah, there were some differences, but nothing that they were like, they're drastically different. They were just like, this is something we should probably consider if crime was to happen.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then so they're going to have to redo it if we start killing aliens, because they have different blood than we do.
What if there's a different viscosity of their blood or like made up of different chemicals?
They didn't even use real blood. I mean, makes sense kind of for safety reasons and sanity reasons on these planes, but it was a fake blood that was used. But it was interesting because this researcher paired up with what does he do? He studies medical surgery and life-saving stuff in space for astronauts and whatever.
Cool.
So this this blood stain pattern scientist kind of paired up with this researcher. Who is this? It's a PhD researcher who is completing his doctoral research on the environmental influence on blood stain pattern analysis. Got in contact with Dr. Pantelos, I believe his name is. Let me find his blurb on it. There's also a term for it that it's like forensics. I don't know. It has some fancy space forensic name that they've labeled it.
I like astroforensics.
Yeah, that is so cool.
So much me wanted to say it's out of this world, just completely unironic.
Gosh.
And I was like, no, that's just stupid.
Okay, I can't.
We love puns here. What do you mean? We told jokes on this channel for the first 50 episodes.
Okay, well, here's our joke for this one. Have you heard of astroforensics? It's out of this world.
That's good. Good. Okay, I can't find. Just looking through the article quickly. I'll post the article though. It was posted in. Where were you posted? Forensic Science International.
How'd you find it? Were you just on their website?
I have a tendency to search forensic science and then select the news button on Google.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't sure if the bloodstain analysis lady that we follow posted anything or not.
Oh, no, I haven't even considered that. No, I should look into reaching out to her to see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we're doing forensics is in space now. Long story short.
That is super cool. Thank you for sharing that with us today. Mm-hmm. I had no idea, and I'm sure as neither of you knew before Nicole told us, astroforensics and blood splatter in space. That's crazy. I personally hope we never have to use it, but I mean, with the advancements that are coming in space travel, it does become a higher risk. So might as well study it early. But with that being said, that's been our episode on contract killers. Our next topic is going to be about fetish killers and Jerry Brudos. So if you want to listen in on some freaky MOs, definitely be sure to check out the next episode. And if you want to check out more of our content or want to kind of keep up to date with what we're posting, what we're doing, you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at What the Forensics. Or you could head over to our Twitter or X, which alternatively is not terribly active at all, but you can still follow us if you want. It's at WT Forensics PC. The one-stop shop for everything What the Forensics would be our website, whattheforensics.ca. And you can also contact us there or contact us at whattheforensics@gmail.com. So please, before we go, if you enjoyed this episode, we would really love to receive some reviews. It really helps us out, and not only in the algorithm of Spotify and streaming platforms, but also just knowing what our listeners want to hear more of or maybe want to hear less of. So with that being said, this has been another episode of What the Forensics. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Just a reminder to everyone that we are not professionals in the forensic science field. We are just interested in forensics and want to share what we are learning with our listeners. We're trying to give you the most accurate information, but we are human and can make mistakes. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next week.